Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. This is Damon Lester, President of the National Association of Minority Automobile Dealers, and I want to welcome you to our convention webinar series. Today we have a special guest from JM&A Group, and today they're going to talk about how the modern consumer wants to buy from your dealership and what about F&I. Today's webinar will be facilitated by Mr. Travis Mazza, VP, Sales Process and Consultation Services. Sorry, Travis. The floor is yours, and I hope all of you guys enjoyed today's webinar. Please be mindful that at the end of the presentation, you will be able to ask your questions via the chat feature. Thank you.
Damon, thank you very much for that introduction. We are very excited to be here with you and all of the dealers and other participants today. I would like to start out with introducing a few other of my associates that will be along with me today. Mark Galetka is our virtual F&I supervisor, and Jonathan Jordan is the manager of our sales strategy. There's one person that's not on this slide. He's our virtual F&I specialist that you'll meet a little bit later in our presentation. But again, JM&A is excited to be here. Hopefully most members on the call know who JM&A is and what our value proposition is for the dealer body. But why we're here today is to make sure we re-emphasize the importance of F&I products and those offerings be presented to your customers in any spectrum, any medium, where they want, how they want, during not only COVID-19, but as the industry continues to evolve and digital and virtual become more popular and relevant. What we're going to cover in today's presentation is a very quick agenda. We want to make sure we have time for Q&A at the end. We're going to talk about how do customers want to buy, not only right now compared to last year, but right now compared to 3 months ago. Why virtual F&I is becoming obviously more important, and what is virtual F&I? We want to also show a virtual F&I demo where you'll get to meet that virtual F&I specialist that I was talking about a few moments ago. And last but not least, we want to make sure that we allow each of you to leave with takeaways and resources that you're able to immediately learn from and use in your dealerships. Finally, we'll have the Q&A. And with that, I again want to thank all of you for being with us today, and I want to turn this over to Jonathan Jordan.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Damon, and thank you to everyone on the call today. We're really excited to be with NAMAD and to share a little bit about virtual F&I and about what customers are looking for and share some of our insights with you. I want to start with this quote from Deloitte, and this is from a survey that they did last year. And they surveyed customers and they said, what aspects of the sales process do you like the least? And the 3 things that consumers overwhelmingly said they disliked about the sales process were: 1, that it took too long; 2, that there was not always price and transaction transparency throughout the process; and that there was too much paperwork. So what Deloitte said was speeding up the sales process, increasing price and transaction transparency, and reducing paperwork are the critical components to a strong online to offline e-commerce solution. And we've used this data for a couple of years now to really craft our strategy as we move through the evolution that's going on in our industry. And even with what's going on in the world right now, we think that if we can solve these 3 problems, if we can speed it up, if we can increase transparency, and we can reduce paperwork, it can really make for a great experience for the dealer and for the end consumer as well. So why are we talking about this now? We've been talking about improving the sales process, and I don't just mean JM&A, I mean the industry as a whole, for many years now. And we've been saying that the consumers want change. But I think we've all heard a lot more in the last 60 to 90 days about the change and about what's going on in the world. And so I just want to share a little bit of data with you. And this is from Cox. This came from the end of March. So right as the COVID-19 situation was really starting to get serious everywhere in the country, they surveyed 1,000 customers and asked them about their changes in shopping preferences pre-COVID versus post-COVID. And the first question they asked was about finalizing the deal and the likelihood that they would want to finalize the deal online. 73% more customers said that they wanted to finalize the deal online versus pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was a single-digit number. 7, 8, 9% said they wanted to completely do the deal online. And that number increased by 73%. When we talk about applying for a car loan or getting financing, a 30% increase there. When they asked them about coordinating a test drive, a 37% increase there. And when we talked about researching extended warranty and service contracts, a 14% increase there. So significant increases in all parts of the transaction. Now, I realize that this was done, right in the middle of COVID-19, and we're still going through it. And we don't know what the new normal is going to look like. But what this data is telling us is there is going to be some sort of change in some consumers. To give you a little bit more recent data, this is from KPMG in April of 2020. I'll move to the end first. On the right-hand side of this slide, 75% of purchase intenders said they prefer to complete documentation and take delivery outside of the dealership. So this prevents new opportunities for customer engagement, satisfaction, and deal closures. And when they ask them specifically about that purchase completion and delivery method, 2% said none or other, 23% said at the dealership, and then that other 75% was either virtual at their office or at home. And so why now is a lot of consumers are telling us that they want to buy a car in a little bit different way. They want to move outside of the dealership. And so we want to talk to you today about, some of the ways to solve for that. The next thing I want to talk about is customer expectations. Whether right now or a couple years from now or a couple years ago, what are customers really looking for in the process? And I think oftentimes we get really caught up in digital. We get really caught up in online. We get really caught up in virtual. And is it that every customer in America wants to buy a car online from start to finish? I would certainly challenge that statement. Absolutely not. But what I can say is all customers are looking for these things. They're looking for the process to be valuable. They want it to be time-saving. They want it to be pressure-free. They want it to be convenient. They want it to be transparent. They want pricing to be clear and inventory availability to be clear. The price on your website and the price on advertising, the price in the showroom, they want all those things to match, obviously. They want the process to be trustworthy. And overwhelmingly, because of every other part of the retail environment right now, they want a frictionless Amazon-like shopping experience. When they buy things, consumers, us included, are used to slick and flexible technology to be able to click on something and have it show up at your door the next day or the day after. And I realize that buying a car is much more complicated than buying something on Amazon, but consumers are looking for a similar experience. And so we believe that we have to do some things to give them that better experience, more frictionless experience. So because of all this, because of what's going on with COVID-19, because of what consumers are telling us that they wanted for a long time, and because of the changing retail environment, we're going through what we like to call a modern retail sales evolution. We don't like to call it a digital retail sales evolution or an online sales evolution. We just like to call it retail. And we use the term modern, and we're moving from, on the left-hand side of this slide, a very dealer-driven experience where the customer comes into the store, the dealer kind of guides that customer through a traditional linear process, to a very consumer-driven experience on the right-hand side of this slide, to allow the customer to do business the way they want to do business, where they want to do business, how they want to do business, using whatever device or channel that they want to use to do that. Now, this traditional business model on the left-hand side has been very successful. And, we've wanted to sustain it. We've had record years of success in our industry. Sales volumes are up. And so there's certainly been some resistance from everybody in the industry to really move to this modern automotive model. But this modern automotive consumer-driven experience is really starting to grow. It's really starting to pick up some steam. And that's mainly, one, because consumers are demanding it. Two, because there's some big disruptors in the marketplace that are starting to allow these things to happen. If you look at an organization like Carvana or CarMax or Tesla, these are all innovative organizations that are doing business a little bit different than the traditional way. And when we talk about disruption, I don't think we can leave out COVID-19. COVID-19 has thrust a lot of consumers and a lot of us and a lot of dealers into the virtual space because customers aren't comfortable coming into the showroom or can't come into the showroom because of the area that you live in or that you do business in. Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen when this is all over, but I believe there's going to be a new normal, and there's definitely an increased awareness of the ability to do business outside of the showroom. So when we talk about this, when we talk about moving that through this modern automotive sales evolution, I don't think we can't talk about this and not talk about F&I. And so what I want to talk about is how are we solving for this? How do you solve for F&I when the customer may or may not come into the showroom, when the customer's doing business online or completely virtually? And we like to break the spaces that a customer could do business up into 4 boxes that you'll see on the right-hand side of this slide. The top left is one that we're all familiar with, in-store with personnel. That's customer comes into your showroom, goes through the traditional sales process, selects a car, agrees on a car, and then goes through the F&I process. And that F&I process probably involves a F&I manager in your store, an F&I office. You're probably using some sort of menu tool to present products. But now there's 3 other spaces that are starting to grow. There's the online with personnel space. And that's a space where customers online, they're engaged in your website. Maybe you have a digital retailing tool, but they're engaged with somebody at the store, whether it be through a chat, text, or phone conversation. As you move down to the bottom right hand of this box, you see online without personnel. That's when the customer is engaged on your website or on a digital retailing tool or maybe on a third-party website like AutoTrader. But there's not an actual human involved. They're starting to go through the process. They're selecting a vehicle. Maybe they're using a payment calculator. Maybe they're applying for a loan or even looking at F&I products, but there's not an actual person involved. And then you have the in-store without personnel. We're starting to see some tablet and kiosk type functionality that's coming out that allows a customer to complete certain aspects of the buying process without actually interacting with somebody. So they're physically in your store, but they're not talking to a salesperson. So how do we solve for F&I in all of these spaces? We believe that F&I, it's still very important to have a highly trained store associate that understands the F&I process to guide the customer through that process. And we believe that that's one of the most effective ways to maintain your F&I products. So how do you do that when the customer doesn't come into the showroom? So what we'd like to talk about today is exactly that, and that is virtual F&I. So what is virtual F&I? Simply put, it's when the customer is in a different location than the F&I manager. So regardless of which one of those boxes that we just looked at that the customer is doing business in, virtual F&I will allow that F&I manager to engage with the customer and take them through the F&I process, secure financing, and sell F&I products. So there's a couple of different scenarios that this could look like. It could mean the F&I managers in your dealership and the customers at home or in their office because they weren't comfortable coming into the dealership or maybe just didn't want to come into the dealership for whatever reason. It could mean that the F&I managers in one location and in the instance of a dealer group, that the customer's in another. So think about a busy Saturday. You've got one of your locations that's very busy, another location that's not, and that F&I manager that's in the store that's not busy is able to help the store that is busy and complete those transactions, maintain that profitability, and get that customer taken care of and on the road quickly. We use video communication tools like Zoom, GoToMeeting, and JoinMe to communicate with the customer and make the presentation customized and interactive. And in a little bit, Mark Galeka is going to take you through that process and actually show you exactly what it looks like from a customer's point of view. Before we jump into that, I want to talk to you a little bit about our virtual F&I journey. This is something that we've been working on for a significant amount of time, and we've put a lot of resources towards it. We started this in October of 2018 as a pilot. And in our pilot, in our first store, we were using a JM&A F&I specialist in this store, and that person was literally in the same building with the customer. And the first several deals that we did, that F&I specialist who was serving as the F&I manager was in one room, and in another room in the same building was the customer who was going through the F&I process, but they were doing it virtually on a screen. And what we were trying to figure out in the very beginning was, will customers really do this? Will customers really go through the process and buy service contracts and buy products in a virtual space? And we very quickly realized that yes, customers will do this. So then we wanted to see, can we scale this? Can we really do this across multiple stores? So since October of 2018 through 2019, we did 1,272 virtual deliveries across 13 rooftops in 4 states. We trained 26 of our F&I specialists and 15 F&I managers on the virtual F&I process. We learned several different things, and overwhelmingly what we learned is, number one, customers were very receptive to it. Over 80% of customers said they actually preferred the virtual process over the traditional process that they had gone through last time. We also realized that we could maintain dealer profitability by doing it. In all of our pilots, we either maintained their F&I PVR and product penetration, and in many cases, we increased the F&I PVR and product penetration. Now, our plan going into 2020 was to roll out to a large dealer group in Q2. And we were going to roll out to a 60 store plus auto group and really scale virtual F&I in a big way before we rolled it out to all of our dealers. But then in March, when COVID-19 started to get very serious, we pivoted. And the reason we pivoted is we've been working on this for over a year and a half. We developed a comprehensive playbook and really had a lot of learnings around virtual F&I. And we felt that it was the perfect time to open up that playbook to our dealers so they could start accommodating these customers that were all of a sudden being forced into the digital space because of COVID-19. So we launched our dealer partners on April 13th, 2020. We trained our entire field team on the virtual F&I process. And we also at the same time developed virtual F&I resources that are available to the entire industry. And we'll make sure that those are available to you after this call. We've trained over 500 of our dealer partners on the virtual F&I process, and we've captured data on over 1,500 deliveries. Now it's still early. There's a lot more data out there that we haven't captured yet, but on these 1,500 deliveries, we're seeing that dealers' F&I products are continuing to be maintained. And these customers, these are 1,500 customers that never stepped foot into the showroom. They did the F&I process completely virtually. And again, we're able to maintain profits on those. So we're really excited about that. I want to share a couple of things from some of our dealers out there that are actively using virtual F&I. And the first is from Brian Benstock at Paragon Honda and Acura. And Brian said, I think the big concern was that we wanted online transactions to also be profitable transactions. These are cutting edge practices that will solve for the customer experience and grow dealer profitability. The next is from Maria Pacifico from Pacifico Auto Group. And Maria said, virtual F&I has been a key part of our transition to a remote sales process. And then from John Smallwood at Lindsay Automotive, the virtual playbook, virtual training, and performance monitoring that JM&A brings to our partnership has been essential during the current contactless economy. Now, these are all dealers that are in areas where they had to do virtual F&I. The customers overwhelmingly were starting to do business outside of the showroom. And some of them were already engaged in this process prior to COVID-19, and some were not. But it's become a key part in these dealers and many other dealers' process to continue to do F&I regardless of where the customer is. So to talk to us now more about exactly how virtual F&I works, because you're probably a little bit curious, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Galecka to dive into some of the details.
Thank you, Jonathan. First, we want to talk about some of the key differences before we talk about a high-level process map. So we're going to go through a high-level process map, give a demo video, a quick demo video, but we want to put a little bit of context around that first. So one of our most commonly asked questions is, what do I need to get started? And it's very simple. It's a computer, which most dealerships already have a few, a camera to install on that computer, high-speed internet to make sure the video and audio is clear, and then a video conference app such as GoToMeeting, Zoom, or Join Me, and then a menu system. Now, there are some key differences when delivering deals virtually than in person. And to highlight a few of those, in our JM&A traditional in-store process, we train F&I managers to meet the customer where they're at the salesperson's desk. And then we go through what we call an interview. We collect information about that customer to later then use on the menu presentation. And in the virtual space, we're not able to meet the customer at the salesperson's desk. We meet them on video conference. Now, the most significant piece of this, and the reason why we highlight this, is the diminished time in the transaction. Because on a virtual delivery, when the customer's at home, or maybe they're in a different dealership, like Jonathan was mentioning earlier, that interview is a little bit more concise than it is in that traditional in-store process. And what that does is it makes the F&I manager or us, when we're delivering the deal, it makes us have the need to know more about the customer going into that deal, and also forces us to build rapport with the customer much more quickly. Second of all, it sounds silly, right? But it's more verbal. So we have less body language. We can't point to show the customer where to look with our pen. Our energy transfer is diminished. And because of that, we need to increase our level of excitement so that the customer stays engaged and they stay listening to us. Because let's face it, if the customer's at home, they typically have a lot more distractions than they would in an F&I office when we're presenting products. Finally, we have no hands. Like I alluded to earlier, you can't point with your pen to show the customer where to look, but also you can't be a little bit more dynamic with your hands. So you have to be more directional with your words. You have to make sure that you're telling the customer, look to the top left or the bottom right. We want to make sure the customer knows exactly where to look, because we've probably all seen a menu presentation where the customer thought we were talking about a maintenance contract when we're really talking about a service contract. And those key differences can make all the difference when it comes to delivering a virtual delivery. So next, we're going to go over a high-level process. And really what it starts with is the introduction. First off, we want to make sure that the audio and the visual connection is good with the customer. They can see us clearly, they can hear us clearly, and then we dive into an information check. So we just verify some high-level details about the transaction and the customer. Then we'll go over some of the details and the features and how complicated these cars are nowadays, as well as the technology in them, so we can reference that later in the menu presentation. Finally, the last step of the introduction is to do a savings check. On the new cars, we want to make sure, just like we do in the F&I office, that the customer is getting all of the rebates and savings that they qualify for. This not only helps us out to build rapport, but also helps provide a little bit more value to the customer for this closing process. From there, we'll transition over to that interview that I mentioned earlier. We're going to use this tool to build rapport and learn a little bit more about the customer. We're going to learn how long they're planning on keeping the car, why they're getting this car, what they're going to use it for, so on and so forth. Between the interview and the menu presentation, we're going to use some effective questions to learn a little bit more about the customer. What type of customer are they? We ask them, how long have you been shopping for a car? That typically tells you whether or not they're an analytical or an emotional buyer. Chances are, if they've been shopping for 3 months, they might be analytical. If they've been shopping for 3 hours, they might be emotional. It's not a guaranteed system, but it works most of the time. From the presentation, then we transfer over into the final disclosure. We use a Columbo close, that's what we call it, which you'll see it on the demo video here shortly. But we want to make sure that we're using language to obtain mental ownership for the customer, so that the customer thinks those products that they purchased are locked into the deal. This is going to minimize the risk of the customer rethinking about those products. We want to make sure we're using language like, let me lock that into your deal for you. Let me print out that paperwork and finalize it right now. And then finally, we want to set expectations with the customer and let them know when their salesperson or their delivery specialist is going to bring the car to them, and also what they're going to bring to them, such as DMV paperwork, maybe their license plate, or if the customer needs to get their down payment ready. so on and so forth. So next, we want to transition over into the short, condensed version of a virtual mock delivery video. We cut out a lot of the in-between to be a little bit more concise for time's sake.
Without further ado, I'm just going to share with you a brief questionnaire, and this is what we show all our guests, just a few standard questions that we like to showcase, just to get a little bit more information from you to better customize the experience to you. So you're going to be seeing that in just a couple seconds. Right here, what we have is just a few questions for you. Number one, for titling purposes, is this the way you want your name to appear on the title?
Yes, it's perfect.
Great, and please verify that this is the correct address for you, 14 Brady Drive in Tampa, Florida.
Yep, that's right.
All right. You excited about Tom Brady coming to Tampa?
Oh man, you have no idea.
That's gonna be awesome.
Oh yeah.
You plan on
Plan on owning it for 5 years and driving 15,000 miles.
Okay, nice. So a little bit longer time than average, and 15,000 miles, pretty good. Do you do more highway or city driving?
Definitely city driving.
More city, okay. And how would you rate the quality of the roads that you often travel on?
They're terrible. There's construction everywhere.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. My part of Florida, they are too. And how often do you have the maintenance done, and where do you plan to have the maintenance done?
Whenever the light comes on, I just go back to the dealership.
Okay, so it's about 5,000 for a Toyota. And where do you like to take it?
To the dealership.
Okay. And do you keep your vehicle in a garage or covered parking?
Yep.
Very nice. Ever lost or need to replace your keys?
Nope.
That's good. I have not a very fun experience. And are you currently active duty military or dependent on someone who is?
No, I'm not.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was just asking that to see if you qualified for the Toyota's military rebate. Also, are you a recent college graduate?
No, sir.
Okay, yeah, that's the other rebate that Toyota has. So I just wanted to make sure that of all the available rebates that you knew about them.
Cool. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm just going to get the next steps rolling. But yeah, I wanted to ask, so how long have you been deciding to get this Camry? Has this been long in the works, or has this been something more recent that you decided to do?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a few months now.
Nice. What was it that caused you to decide now? Just like the programs going on, or?
Program. Yeah,
Okay.
program. That's great.
Awesome. So perfect. I have the next step ready. So in just a second, you'll be seeing that. So basically what we have here are all the different options that Toyota wants you to know about. That being said, I'll kind of direct you to the right-hand side. So this is the total coverage side. This is all the options that are available on the Toyota. Also, what we have here on the left side, this driver's needs analysis, that's where we take data from the survey that you just filled out. We also pull in data from other drivers similar to you who have purchased Camrys and what they've chosen to go with on their vehicles, as well as input data from sites like Edmunds and Kelley Blue Book. So that all comes together and we come up with some custom tailored recommendations for you. It's a lot like the way Amazon recommends different products based on what you might like. So that's what we have here. First up, the vehicle service contract. This would be for 60 months, 75,000 miles. You indicated on the survey earlier that you do want to keep the Camry for about 5 years and drive 15,000 miles per year. So this will keep you protected during that entire time frame. This protects you from breakdowns, so any covered component, whether mechanical or electrical, and there's no deductible, and it's accepted at over 6,000 locations nationwide. Underneath that, we have the car care maintenance. This is a plus plan, and it goes for 48 months or 50,000 miles. You mentioned that you like to, do your maintenance. It's important to you to get it done when, the manufacturer's light comes on, you want to make sure you're keeping up with it. So this will pay for a lube, oil, and filter, 15-point vehicle inspection, tire rotation, and value-added coupons. Underneath that, we have the total loss protection. Are you familiar with how total loss protection and GAP works?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it can definitely be a lifesaver. I'm just going to click this more info button. This will bring up a pretty helpful graphic from Edmunds. So on this page here, Edmunds actually uses their data to showcase what the expected gap or loss would be at different parts of your ownership period. So of course it would be its highest, right around this time in October of this year. So later this year, your expected gap or loss would be $5,000. So it's definitely a good thing to stay protected. And during Florida, we could have pretty adverse weather conditions. So it's always good to be on the safe side.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So that concludes the driver's needs analysis. Mark, did you have any questions about those three before I move on to the total coverage side?
No.
Okay, perfect. So by choosing the total coverage side, you receive everything in the driver's needs analysis. However, you gain road hazard tire and wheel to protect your tires and wheels from covered road hazards for the next 60 months. This is unlimited mile coverage, so it doesn't matter how much you drive, you still get 5 years of benefit from it no matter what, and there's no deductible. And also the JM&A Dent Wizard. So this would be for 60 months as well, and it's really helpful for popping out dings and dents up to the size of a credit card in parking lots and similar areas, because we know that sometimes people can get a little bit careless when they're opening their car doors, or I've seen wind take a shopping cart, and all sorts of unfortunate things can happen. So this is a nice way to protect you from that. It also protects the inside from rips, tears, and burns.
Nice.
Yeah. So Mark, did anything interest you from the total coverage side, or would you like to just stick with the driver's needs analysis?
Let's stick with the driver's needs.
Perfect. So what I'll do for you then, Mark, is I'll click this blue sign button, and then I'm going to relinquish control over to you of the mouse. So you can touch down on that touchpad and you can give your signature for the 3 options.
Cool.
I'm just going to send over one more screen to you then. This is what we call the final acceptance. Basically just one last run through through everything that we went over. And while that loads up, I just want to say I talked to your salesperson, Mike, and he's going to be bringing the vehicle to you around 6 p.m. Does that still work for you?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, he's going to be taking the DMV documents over to you as well, the ones that need wet signatures. So you can expect him to have all that when he shows up.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. All right, so here, like I mentioned earlier, is just the final acceptance. So it shows what you are accepting, which is the vehicle service contract for 5 years, the car care maintenance plan, and the total loss protection. Over here is the coverages that you decline, which is the road hazard tire and wheel, the dent wizard, and key replacement. So Mark, I'm a little curious, was there something about the road hazard that concerned you?
No, not specifically.
Okay, yeah, the reason that I ask is because on your survey earlier, you did indicate that the roads around you were pretty adverse. There were a lot of construction sites, things that can leave around, things like nails and tires. Those can really do a number on your tires and wheels. And the road hazard right now would only be $10 a month, but that way you probably have a lot more peace of mind when you're going through those construction sites. So is that something you'd like to add on at this time?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just drag that over. One moment while it loads. All right. So same as before, I'm going to relinquish control back to you, and you can sign for those 4. So do you know who you're going to show the car to first?
Oh yeah, my wife. She doesn't even know I'm getting it.
Oh, okay. Just hit apply signatures.
Okay.
I'm sure she's gonna be a fan of it. I mean, you're getting a Toyota, it's a pretty well-loved car. So that pretty much concludes the process, Mark. I just want to, thank you again for your time. I'm sure this is a little bit different than how you purchased cars in the past, but thanks for bearing with me. And in about 2 weeks, you can expect to get a CSI survey in the mail. So I just wanted to let you know about that. I hope you've had a great experience. But any last questions for me before I go?
No, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, happy to help, and you'll be seeing Mike later this afternoon.
Good deal. Have a good day.
Awesome. Take care, Mark. Good speaking with you. Malika, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
All right, so one of the most prominent questions, if not the most important question that we had when we started Virtual F&I was, how is the customer going to react to somebody being on the other side of a video camera, pitching them products and explaining the transaction to them virtually? And what we found was very interesting. We found that we were a little bit more uncomfortable than what the customer was. And because of this, the simpler that we kept the transaction and the simpler language and descriptions that we used with the customer, the more seamless the process was. You know, at the end of the day, the core processes and the closes that we use and the language that we use every day remains the same over Virtual F&I. We just have simply a different method of communicating that information. And our actions, our steps, the way that we interact and build rapport with the customer is all the same. Whether you use Zoom, GoToMeeting, FaceTime, or Google Hangouts, really the app doesn't matter. As long as we keep it simple and we explain the process in a very clear and concise way, the customers are very willing to adapt to it and are very accepting of it, and they appreciate being in their own comfort zone while purchasing their vehicle. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan to talk about some actionable items.
Thank you, Mark. I hope that taking everybody through the process and Mark sharing that video with us today gave you an idea of what Virtual F&I looks like for your F&I manager, as well as for the customer. And I can't emphasize enough that the fact that your team, when they're doing virtual, needs to get comfortable. And what Mark said, I even found it in myself, and we find it in a lot of F&I managers, is going on video is a little nerve-wracking sometimes. And but once you get comfortable, it really makes everything else that they already know flow very well in a virtual space. So what are some things you can do right away? We have a virtual F&I tips and tricks guide that we're going to make available to everybody on this call that gives you an overview of the process and an overview on a lot of tips and tricks to implement Virtual F&I in your store. We also have training around Virtual F&I that's been developed and delivered by our Performance Development Center that's available for the management teams in your store to get an overview of the Virtual F&I process and to start to get them more comfortable about doing business in a virtual world. There's no cost for this training. There's no obligation for this training as well. I'd also encourage you, if you're curious about Virtual F&I and want to talk about Virtual F&I in your dealership, to please reach out. We'd love to have a conversation with you, whether you're a customer of JM&A or not, about what Virtual F&I could look like in your store and how we could help you with that. Please go to our website, jmnagroup.com, and click on Learn More about Virtual F&I. There's more resources there, and that's the best way to contact us as well. We'll also get these resources out to you through NAMAD as well. With that, I'll turn it back over to Damon, and we'll be here to answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, I want to thank you guys for participating and doing this excellent workshop for us. There is one question I have so far, which is would tablets or iPads work with the Virtual F&I?
Mark, you want to take that question?
Sure. Tablets or iPads do work. Obviously, the bigger the screen, the better for the customer, because we want to make sure the customer can see all the documents and the menu presentation as clear as possible. So we encourage a customer to use a laptop if they can. Nowadays, a lot of people are transitioning away from those laptops to iPads and to phones. So what we've noticed is when you're using a laptop or when you're using a phone, mobile device, you have to download the app for the video conference tool, whatever it is, GoToMeeting, Join Me, whatever it is. But it's so much more important to keep it simple on those smaller screens. And when I say that, I mean, instead of making it maybe a 2-column menu, maybe we want to make it a 1-column menu, so the service contract is a little bit easier to read and the products are a little bit easier to understand. So when transitioning, it certainly is possible. And it's an easy way to do it because they all come equipped with a camera, which not all laptops have cameras. But we want to make sure we're keeping it as simple and as large as possible so the customer can easily see it.
Any other questions? I think that's it. So on behalf of NAMAD, Travis, Jonathan, Heather, you guys, thank you very much for doing this with us today. We look forward to our continued partnership with JM&A Group. And please know if there's anything that we can do to assist you, we are here to help. And so with that, if there aren't any other questions, I can close this webinar. All right. You guys have a great weekend. Be safe and enjoy this Memorial Day weekend. Thanks.
Thank you, Damon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.